View from the Gutters presents The Long Run, Episode 2.
She gotta pack much back, so fellas, has your girlfriend got the butt? Tell her to shake it, shake that healthy butt, baby God.
The Long Run is a show where we discuss a comic series longer than a trade or graphic novel. Warning, this podcast contains massive spoilers for this book. Please read the run before listening to the episode.
All right, let's start this shindig.
All right.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, bonus episode,
Are
whatever.
you recording?
Yeah, I've been recording for
Jesus.
literally hours.
Okay, there was something I was going to say to you, but I'm not going to say it.
Why not?
Guys,
Well, no, go ahead. So just let me know.
No, I'll
What are
tell you
gonna-
later.
you
You'll
gonna tell me
understand
what
why I
you
can't say.
want-
I want a bone you.
All right.
Alright.
I mean,
Okay, well, that's not a secret, Joe. And it's been on the air several times before, so,
oh, cool. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so welcome to the Long Run, Episode 2,
Yay.
Empowered.
We actually
I'm
made a
Tobiah
second one.
Panchin.
Oh, I'm Turbotron 2000.
I'm Joe Preddy.
I'm Andrew Chard.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
We're going in a different order and not from the normal person who
Yeah,
starts this time.
I got confused.
Well,
I always
still
start.
get-
I
That was
never-
weird.
I
I was
just go.
expecting Cade to go next because he sits on my right.
I was waiting for Kate
Everybody
to go
started
next. I
looking
didn't
at
want
Kirby,
to
so-
go.
Yes, but I
Everybody-
always go last.
We have our special guest. We have a special guest star with us.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
returning podcaster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is my
yeah.
third one.
I know.
Yeah, no Eric Mannix, no Matt McGinnis.
Nope.
The irascible Turbotron 2000.
Yeah. So the beard force is strong today.
The beard-
Nobody without a beard this week. So
There is a beard force. There
I
is.
should have brought my beard passe.
Well, Joe can be your beard.
I will act as Turbotron's beard.
I think it's the other way around.
Well,
But-
you know, thanks for blowing my cover there,
Yeah, whoops.
homie.
Damn. All right.
You just broke the hearts
How
of
are you going to show
like-
your face at the society ball tonight?
I know, right? It's unbelievable. Anyways,
Let's talk about Empowered.
let's talk about Empowered
Um,
because I've been itching for this.
How do you guys want to dig into this? Do you want to just go
let's
around
do
the table?
what we've been
and-
doing. Go around the table,
Yeah.
say what we thought about it.
Cool.
Kirby, do you want to start?
Okay.
Because I know that
you
I know
did-
that you really like this comic a lot.
I
Well,
did,
you
and
recommended
I
it
recommended it, and then it was
on
shot
the
down
long
by.
run. By everybody.
Yeah,
Nobody
they-
wanted to read it. They were just.
And I went home and
behind
I
your
cried.
back.
I did.
They were saying a lot of horrible things behind your back after
Yeah.
the episode too. I mean, those girls.
They can be mean.
I've heard that. I don't know that that's true.
So what did you think about Empowered?
Oh, I love Empowered. It was actually one of the comic books that got me into comic books. So I ended up, like, Joe got it, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh, this is crap. What's Joe getting this time? And then and then he's like, no, you should read it. You should read it. It's just kind of, it's exactly the opposite of what you think it is. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I started reading it, and then I got the second one, and then it was my birthday, and I asked for the rest. And then I've been getting them consistently since because I just think that it's a really great comic book. It kind of turns everything upside down. Like I said when I recommended it, there's like this scene with like nurses, and the nurses are all dressed all skimpily, but the guys are dressed exactly the same way. Like there's no difference between them, and there's a lot of like, I don't know, it just does a really good job of kind of making fun of that genre and like taking what you think it is and turning it into making fun of what you think it is and pointing out certain things. So
Yeah, the thing that I compare it to a lot is Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead,
Mhm.
because I feel like it does what they do, which is first make fun of the weird elements of the genre, but then turn around and do the same thing but awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because like those movies, the first two parts are parody, and then the third part is like awesome over the top of that genre.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Empower doesn't wait till the third act to do that, but I think it does the same sort of thing.
Yeah, and I really like the way that one of the biggest things that I think really makes it good is that she does grow in it, and she does kind of like start to get over herself, and you know her suit turns into this thing that's like not really it being tattered up, it's her self-esteem, and
Right.
you know how she kind of learns to be okay with herself and realize that hey, I am a superhero, and now it's time for me to like go do superhero things instead of being a big crybaby, even though
Right.
she still
Well, and it's
kind of a
also
crybaby.
interesting that this like analogy was made in this comic, what is not that recently. Like the first volume came out in 2005.
I don't know.
Let me look.
I
have it with
think
me,
so.
but-
I mean, he's been doing it for
I think it's been about one
while.
a year.
Yeah.
And volume 8 is coming out
In
this
December.
year.
In
In
Okay,
December?
Yeah.
2007 is the first
Okay.
year there's been done, but Marvel is really doing some weird stuff with their female characters right now too, where they're like having them go through a lot of self-esteem issues and like, oh, maybe I'm not the best superhero, and Ms. Marvel or Captain Marvel now is having like a lot of similar problems, but I feel like they're not achieved nearly as well as in this book, because this book
Yeah, one of the terrible sexist things that happens in comics a lot, or just general portrayals of women, is portraying them as like driven by their emotions and not having control over them. And to that extent, like this could be perceived as a little bit sexist because she, Emp is a wimp and a crybaby and she gets beat up all the time. But she acknowledges that fact and she says, I'm going to work past that and I'm going to try and be a good hero despite my shortcomings. And I think that's what subverts it.
And they talk about her bravery a lot. It's like, look, if anyone else had gotten tied up, beaten up, and defeated like 100 times like you have, like they would have given up. But you didn't give up. Like that's what's so interesting. And what I think is so powerful about this book over like Ms. Marvel and Spider-Woman and stuff that's going on now is Emp doesn't really have a great reason to be super confident because she hasn't succeeded yet. Like she's still at the early stages of superherodom where like eventually she will do great things, and that comes later in the book. That starts to happen. But the problem with like Ms. Marvel and Spider-Woman is they've been doing awesome superhero stuff for so long that they have no excuse to be down on themselves. And like Emp has a lot of reasons to be down on herself. Her life is kind of shitty.
I think I think my favorite things about Empowered is I think there is a tendency to Empowered is not a trope. She's not. She is well structured. She is made human through the fact that he gives her this really great backstory and he gives her motivation and she has agency and she is a character. She's not just. I think a lot of the times, it's much easier to just write a woman as, oh, she's the one that's driven by her emotions, and she's the man-hating lesbian, and so it's very easy to just kind of like, cast them as like, well, that's just their whole thing. And the fact is that Emp is not defined by the fact that she is kind of an emotional. She does get emotional, and she can be a wussy. She can also walk into a room filled with people and like destroy them all because somebody she loves is in danger. And she doesn't stop to think. She just acts. And then, so you see her being really heroic. And then, she'll go home and be like, oh, I suck. When it's like, no, like, seriously, 3 pages ago, you were like the biggest badass in this book.
Yeah.
So you clearly don't suck. But and I feel like that makes her so human because I think that's how people are. It's so much easier to focus on the things that you are insecure about than the things that you do well.
Yeah, and just, she has a great supporting cast of characters that like help her work through that, and because she has a good cast of characters, like she's able to grow much more quickly and like learn things from each outing. So I think that makes a huge difference too.
I think that really is the critical element of this book, is that all of the characters are incredibly human.
Yeah.
This is a story ultimately about people that has superheroes are the setting, but it's not so much the superhero genre.
Right.
I mean, there are elements of the story that are within the superhero genre, where she is going out and fighting villains, but really the focus is on the humanity of the characters, both Emp herself and all the assholes in the cape industry, I guess, that just, try and suck her soul out.
Yeah, I mean, it does superhero deconstruction in a way that the like stuff like The Boys and other Mark Millar books. Well, that's not Mark Millar is not The Boys, but and other books written by Mark Millar are trying to do, but they can't do as well because they don't have the subtlety of this book and they don't have the time that this book has. Like they have to continually hammer things into your face and be like, nope, keep paying attention. Here's a boob. Here's them doing horrible, awful things.
Yeah.
And this book is so much more subtle. It takes so much more time for their true asshole nature to come out, and it's okay because you're invested in the characters and in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
like-
Adam Warren is supremely gifted at world building
Yeah.
and
He
character
is,
building.
yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that I think the other thing is that this is deconstruction in a very similar way to Invincible, which is it's coming from a place of love of the genre. It's
Yeah.
not coming from, Millar and Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis will be the first person to tell you that he hates superheroes. And that's what The Boys really is it's tearing them down. And
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think Mark
like,
Miller has said on more than one occasion that he doesn't believe in superheroes.
Yeah, and so when you look at the things they write, it's really easy to see that that's what they want to do. They want to tear these characters down. And it's the opposite. What Adam Warren is doing is the complete opposite of that. He's giving these characters the ability to be truly heroic. And
Well-
then, when they seize it, it's a great moment. It's a powerful moment.
It's something that we've talked about many times before on the show, and like when Cade recommended Powerless, we talked about it a lot too, and it's like, what is it that makes the superhero heroic? Is it their powers, or is it something about their character?
Right.
And I think this
Right.
book goes a long way to show that, like, hey, she doesn't have the greatest superpowers. She's not that super heroic, but her actions are what make her
A hero.
a superhero.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the most heroic chapters in this entire series is the one where she sees the thug who has the aneurysm in his brain.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm not fooling around. Like, forget everything else. You need to go to the hospital right
Mhm.
now. Like, nothing else matters. Like, I don't care that you stole something or whatever. Like,
Right.
I'm trying to save your life.
Well, and I think it's moments that make moments in later trades. Like there's definitely a storyline where a hero kind of goes bad and is trying to kill everybody else, and she totally pulls off this amazingly ballsy and dangerous plan, and she does it really well.
Mhm.
And it's because that has happened, because you spend so much time with you I think you grow to care about her because she is like I read this and I'm like, God, you're like, how can you be so hard on yourself? So when she does do something awesome, you're like right there with her supporting characters. You're right there going, fuck yeah, kick some ass.
I was at are you talking about the Capies
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I like that one and the one where she is dressed up as herself and she has to save everybody
Oh,
who
that's-
jerks to
yeah,
her
that is
when
actually-
she
Oh,
does
yeah.
her cosplay thing.
Yeah, because she has the day job where she does mall appearances
Yeah.
in a shitty version of her own costume
Yeah.
With
as
a
herself.
southern accent.
With
a terrible southern
accent,
accent,
yeah.
which
Terrible.
I think is really funny in the way that it's like actually typed out on the page. It looks
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it totally does.
I also love this book so much for its like flavor as well, like the way the art is penciled and it
Mhm.
seems penciled and not inked. It's certain
is,
chapters
yeah.
It's
are
kind of a
inked.
mix. It seems like he does a lot more heavy pencil work in the earlier volumes.
Yeah.
And as things go on, like the foreground is more often inked, where the backgrounds are penciled.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
trying different stuff with the art, and I really appreciate the like more penciled look of it and the hand lettered style that the early books has. It's obviously digitally lettered in later books, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if the first volume was hand lettered.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it just like has that kind of stylistic quality that I really appreciate. And also he's just hugely influenced by manga,
Mhm.
which he worked
in.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we haven't talked about often enough on the show is that we talk about American comics like often, and American media in general, often lacking a lot of strong female characters. But if you're looking for a lot of strong female characters, like there are so many in manga that it is unbelievable. Like I forget how many there are in certain shows until I'm rewatching them or reading
Right.
them again, and I'm like, there are like 10 strong female characters. There are more strong female characters in some shows than there are male
absolutely.
characters.
Yeah,
And I'm not just
absolutely.
talking about like Sailor Moon. I'm talking about shows that have a male protagonist, like Full Metal Alchemist or something. Like there are way more
Oh no,
cool
Full Metal
Yeah.
Alchemist is
female
filled with
characters
badass
than
women.
Oh my
than male
gosh.
characters.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that he definitely draws on a lot of that influence.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
cool.
Adam, Kate, I'm sorry. God, I knew I was gonna do
No,
that, and I psyched
Adam.
myself out. Totally psyched myself out. I'm like over here. I'm like, no, it's Cade. Why are you gonna call him Adam?
Well, first off, I wanted to mention because it's been bugging me, and Andrew just brought it up. I still cannot believe I said on air that would Batman still be a hero if he didn't have superpowers? Because Batman doesn't have superpowers.
Doesn't he though?
Yeah, his money is a superpower.
Well, no, I consider hypercompetence to be a superpower.
That's
Like
fair.
Batman, okay, when you train your muscles, like you can work certain muscle groups up to a certain level, but you can't be like supremely good at too many different areas. Like the muscles that you have to develop to be good at running preclude you being good at certain other things.
Right.
Or like if you want to be light and acrobatic and flexible, then you can't also be like strong and resistant
a
to
big
punches.
bodybuilder.
So the fact that Batman can be strong in all the ways that he's strong at the same time and have all the skills that he does at the age that he is and like constantly be practiced at all of these arts that legitimate like people who are Olympic level in those things, like they're that good because they work on it all the fucking time.
Well,
like
also-
hours and hours every day practicing.
His brain too.
And his brain too. Like there's no way that he could be that good at that many different things.
I think you guys are blowing it. I mean, he's only an Olympic level athlete, genius, criminologist, you know.
Detective.
PhD,
Multi-billionaire.
detective, escape artist, ninja, samurai.
I will say this though, because I know at least one person who's going to listen to this and say something about it. You can weightlift and be incredibly flexible too. You can't be like a power lifter and be incredibly
there
flexible.
are limits though. Like if you want to be an Olympic level like sprinter, like you're gonna have completely different muscle groups.
Well,
than
you're
an
gonna have a
Olympic
completely
lift.
different workout routine. You're
Well,
not
yeah.
gonna,
I mean, there's all the anaerobic versus aerobic
Yeah, and
exercise
that's-
and
yeah.
you know muscles that are meant for short bursts versus long.
But,
There's like a lot of different problems there, but when Batman is able to balance it and to be like he is quick, he is agile, he is ninja-like, but at the same time he can still like punch
Well,
the
he's
shit
got.
out
I
of
always
you.
thought of. Yeah, I think hypercompetence is a good way to put it. He kicks ass. That's his
But in any
superpower.
case, you were saying,
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so about Empowered, I had problems with it at the beginning. And I kept talking to Joe about it because I had a real hard time getting through the first 3 volumes. I felt like, I mean, I kept talking to Joe and he's like, oh, but it's totally making fun of this trope and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't at first feel that there was enough story to warrant the statement that it's making fun of it because I saw it as the trope itself instead of making fun of it. And there were some very defining moments. I actually wrote down the trade numbers and the trade numbers and the pages. So towards the end of number 3 is when I really started getting hooked. And the first time that I got up and shouted, fuck yes, was volume 3, page 146. She's bound and gagged, and she hits the guy over the head with a piece of rebar.
Yeah.
And I was just like, fuck yes, now we're getting somewhere. And then, like 10 pages later, is the Kozu fight where she's fully dressed. She's wearing like jeans and a tank top, like fully dressed and just kicking the shit out of a bunch of ninjas. And it stopped being that trope.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
because now you're seeing this badass female fully dressed, doing everything that a ninja can, and that started to sell me on it. The next volume was the Capies one, and there was a moment in that really got to me. Let's see here. It was so volume 4, page 150. And it's these supervillains talking about they wish they could vote in the Capies because they would vote for Empowered.
Right.
And they said, I like a white cape who's not all high and mighty and la-di-da like the rest of them. Hell yeah, there's something kind of fascist about all these capes who never ever lose, right? And it points out that, you know, it's nice to see a superhero who is human. I mean, especially with some of the stuff that she does, her power level is pretty high.
Hmm.
You know, with the exception that was pointed out earlier, it's her mind that is holding her back.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I really like that idea that like it's her mind and not her costume, because I think that a lot of superheroes like get off too easy, where it's like, oh, you put the costume on, you're infallible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's kind of the opposite with her. Like she puts the costume on and it's an instant weakness. Like she's now a target.
She has
Yeah.
such a poor body image.
Well, and she
that
also
the costume just exacerbates.
right, and she would never get tied up if she didn't put the costume on, right? Like if she was just an average
Right.
woman, like she puts herself in the face of danger because she wants to be a hero, because she's wanted it her whole
No,
life.
I think it asks a really interesting question, which is to how far are you willing to go as a person to live up to your ideal?
Exactly.
Like since she was a little girl, she wanted to be a hero. She wanted to help people
Hmm.
and protect people. And she's willing to go to these extreme lengths to do it, even though she does get tied up and molested almost constantly.
I mean, if a job wants me to shave my beard, like I won't apply for it. Like that's
No,
how
totally,
lazy
totally.
I am. So when you see her like doing all this stuff that she's so uncomfortable with, like wearing the super skin tight outfit that she can't wear underwear underneath, or basically getting
Or
it
anything
ripped,
over top of it.
right, and
Yeah.
getting it ripped off of her and tied up and put on the internet and YouTube and all. She's like got hundreds of videos online of her being tied up and beaten up by supervillains. If you had to go through that to be a hero, I don't think most of us would make it, and that's what makes her such an interesting character. She has to go through all of this horrible shit to get there.
And one of the things about the Keepies one that was what makes it one of my favorites is when she's like confronting this person who's like trying to, kill everyone essentially.
Mhm.
He's like, well, they just make fun of you. You just were nominated because it's a joke, like all this stuff. And she's like, well, I don't do it because I want to be nominated or recognized or anything. I do it because it's who I am.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. Like,
Well, and also that issue is so great too, because she takes what essentially is like her weakness and turns it against him by pretending that her suit has gotten totally ripped off
Yeah,
of her,
true.
because she can turn it invisible.
and-
And which it's been just like a point of like, oh, now she's naked now, he isn't that funny.
Right.
But later he uses it in a way that's like, oh, you thought I was naked? No, I have the suit on still. You're fucked. And it's great.
Which is so great about Adam Warren's plotting. Like he'll do something that seems like a joke, and then much later it'll come back and actually turn out to be an important plot point.
Yeah.
But
And I kind of do agree with Kate a little bit. Like, and for me, it's a lot shorter. Like the first half of the first volume is a lot of short individual stories that don't
Yeah.
really seem connected, of just her getting stripped and tied up and all that. And I think once you get past the first half of the first volume, like once Ninjette gets introduced,
right.
I think it's just an ever increasing level of quality in terms of like the plot and what he's
Well,
doing
the
with the character.
stories get longer, and there's more character development in there.
yeah.
I mean, see, even when, for me, it was that even after Ninjette got introduced, there was still so much sex, masturbation, all this other stuff that to me felt like softcore porn without being softcore porn. And it was
Like, what's the line between the trope and like poking
Well,
fun at the
and-
trope if you like
Yeah,
are kind of embodying it at the same
This-
time?
This kind of brings me to a point that I wanted to make and that I realized this time is that this is in a world where in our culture one of the fastest way, like, sex is something that's associated with bad girls, especially in comics culture. And this,
Well,
one
not
of
just bad girls, but just like
well,
negative connotation.
it's got a
with
negative
our girls.
connotation for women. And one of the things I love about Empowered, even though the first time reading it, it is kind of like you're reading it and you're like, what do I do with this? But the fact that she has a healthy sex drive and a healthy sex life, and the fact that that is something that she uses to kind of, that is a confidence builder for her. Like there's a scene in one of the trades where she's having sex with her boyfriend, and you can see the suit in the other room starting to repair itself. It's like, it's something that's very positive for her. And I think that's amazing, especially.
Well, it also normalizes her quite a bit.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It's a thing we can all relate to is the relationship side of her.
Yeah.
Her life is, oh, okay, she's got these people she can lean on, and she leans on them in different ways at different times.
I mean, the thing
and if
that
it was
makes...
always just, hey, I see my boyfriend, now we have sex, then I leave, like, I would totally agree with Kate. But it very quickly, after she meets this guy, becomes, I need him for support more, like, mentally. Like, I need to talk to him about how I feel, and he is good at consoling her.
Although it is voyeuristic, and I do, like, that's in the way where it gets to me, where I'm kind of like, there's a scene where she comes home after she's been nominated for a KP, and Ninjette is there, and also, at one point, she captures this immortal, like, cosmic being in this...
Who is the best
demon
character?
beast?
Yeah, no, he is the best character. He's my favorite character, but... And she just she's like, oh, I got nominated for a KP, haha, and then she goes up to Thug Boy, her boyfriend, and she's like, come and bang me, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like...
Really?
I would leave. I mean, like, Ninjette's just kind of standing there, and I'm like, I mean, I would kind of be like, I'm gonna go and get some ice cream.
I think it's funny that, like, Ninjette spends so much time in the apartment when most of the time Empowered and her boyfriend are just doing it boning in the other room. Yeah. And I think that would be weird, except that I think Ninjette, like, gets a lot from a lot out of the demon guy.
Well,
like, a lot out of talking
that's
to
totally
him.
The thing.
And
it's also very much a thing that a ninja would do.
Yeah, it's just hang
totally
around.
Yeah, totally.
I think that there's definitely, like, a very voyeuristic aspect to the book, and I think that he knows that there is an audience that is interested in seeing a woman in a relationship with a guy, and I don't think he's using it to be like, oh, I'm selling this book to men.
No, and this brings me to what I want to say about the trope thing, because reading it this time, I really read it with a critical eye as to, well, you can't get around this damsel in distress thing, right? And, like, we can say it's parody, we can say that it's kind of a deconstruction of it, but where do we see that? And I really think it's that, in that first volume especially, it's harder to make the justification, but it's the fact that he very quickly sets about making her a person outside of this.
No, that's very true. I mean, really what it comes down to is that I feel I agree that the sex was warranted. It is, the story does need it.
Was it Adam warranted?
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
It does flesh her out as a character, literally flesh.
I was just gonna say, literally.
Well, yeah.
But I feel that, there was too much for my taste.
Yeah.
I guess is what it is. But I did want to mention that, like, okay, so if I had just read the first trade, I probably would not have picked up any more of them.
That's what happened to me the first time I read it. Is, like, I used to recommend this to people at the shop because I had read the first one and I was like, oh, it's kind of a cute superhero story with a female character, and for, like, guys that are interested in that male gazy kind of superhero-ness, like, I would always recommend this book because I knew it was so much more than that. Mm-hmm. But I never was able to make it past the first trade before, and so I'm totally with you on that, Cade.
But I'm really glad that you guys got me to read the whole thing, because I wanted to mention that there was one other page in a volume that really got to me, and this actually tells you more the strength of the writing, is that even though I had a hard time through the first few trades, this story really got to me. And in volume 6, page 50, there was this scene where she is talking to Thug Boy for right after the Willie Pete debacle, and he's yelling at her that, she left a voicemail and that might have been the last thing that he ever heard from her, and she says, I'm a fucking superhero, okay? It's not a safety-intensive line of work. I'm not going to ask for your permission each time I go after a bad guy.
Right. Yeah.
And I was actually crying through this scene. So even though I had a hard time getting into it, I did fall in love with these characters. And I think that is a definite strength of the writing.
Yeah, there are so many good characters in this book. Like we've barely touched the surface on a lot when we mentioned Ninjet, but I think Ninjet's a fantastic character.
Oh, yeah.
I actually want to talk about Willie Pete because I was rereading. I think it's in volume 3, late volume 3 or early volume 4, when Willie Pete has grabbed that gang of supervillains and he's slowly raping and eating them to death.
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
Like,
yeah.
that character is fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
that is
he
one of
is.
the scariest supervillains I have seen in anything ever.
Well, he's made of fire. He skull fucks anyone, really. And
Well,
then is a
yeah.
cannibal. That
Yeah.
comes out in that scene that he's also a cannibal.
Yeah.
And then, like, not that much later in the issue, what is it? Who's the psychic?
Mindfuck.
Mindfuck.
Yeah.
She, like, mind melds to him or whatever, and it's like, he's just fractured, and
Yeah,
there's,
he's
you know,
not even...
he's a broken thing. And that makes him all the more
Yeah.
terrifying, is because there isn't a lot of logic going on in his head. He's just
Right.
out to be destructive.
Well,
He's
and
like
he feels
chaotic evil.
Yeah, exactly. And when you read it, he feels it's like inexorable, right? Like if he was coming for you, that's it. You'd be fucked. Because
Yeah.
like it's made apparent that he is not a fucking cream puff in any way, and that really he does not like
He doesn't want anything.
No, he
Yeah.
doesn't. He just wants to kill and hurt and maim and skull fuck people.
Mhm.
And it's the hilarious thing thinking about it is that this is a term that gets tossed around as kind of a humorous thing to say, like, oh, skull fuck you. And you're like, oh, not after reading this.
It's not.
Like, it's awful. It is fucking awful. Like, there's a diatribe at one point where he goes off about he goes after supers in particular because they're stronger, and so
They're
he can
more
skull fuck
durable.
them for
Yeah.
longer. And it's like,
But also the inevitable buildup of steam in their head.
Yeah,
like,
will make their heads
blows
yeah, it's just
it's like, okay, well, I don't want to. Wow,
It's
I
like,
never
I don't
want
want
to
to live
see that.
anymore.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
ever want to see that.
So I mean, I think there's definitely
But just
Like-
just the level of just
Malevolence.
horror and menace
yeah.
coming off of this guy in what is on the surface a fairly lighthearted story. Like,
Well, yeah, it starts
it's
off.
kind of incredible.
Well, and that's kind of what gets me getting into what Kate just said is that he sneaks it in there.
Yeah.
Like you're reading this and she's like, she's just been tied up with duct tape for the 8th time, and you're like, oh, that's silly. Or like there's definitely whole like stories dedicated to the caged demon wolf trying to get Ninjet to take off her clothes, right? Because she's drunk, or describing in very graphic and very alliterative ways the sex that Empowered and Thug Boy have just had, right?
Right.
And it'll go from that to telling this story that really just like comes out and socks you in the jaw with the emotional intensity of it, and there's no way to prepare yourself for it.
Well, I think this book has a very slow build. Like, I think it goes from being like very tongue-in-cheek, very like, I don't want to say like suburban level superhero, but very, small-time superhero. Like the caped group that she joins is not the Justice
super
League.
homies.
The super homies. They're
Yeah.
not the Justice League.
Yeah.
They are like Justice League Detroit. And, and
yeah, that was
yeah, right? And so they're just going to take on these minimal level threats, and by the time that was Willie Pete shows up, it's been a slow build. You've seen him like destroy things in the flashbacks. You've seen him like slowly make his way towards them. So that like slow creeping build of intensity in villain scale also like really helps the book like mature as a book.
There's also a lot of world building stuff with the aliens and the Lotus Nodes network and the super volcano in San Antonio. Like he throws out all of these little things that kind of just get layered onto the backdrop of the story, where you get the feeling like, yeah, Empowered is like the D-list associate member of this one superhero team, and so
C-list, thank you very much.
C-list, excuse me. And she gets to deal with like muggers and bank robbers and shit. But there's this whole other level of shit that's going on that she only gets very slight glimpses of.
Yeah.
That I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of that when she's dealing with Mindfuck and those things that are going on.
Yeah.
And I like the way that Warren is just kind of dribbling it out a little bit at a time rather than just throwing everything at you at once.
Well, he's definitely expanding his own, like, the universe as he's writing, and, all of the layers that come out pretty naturally through the story. I felt like too.
Mhm.
He never just cuts away and it's like, now I'm gonna tell you about the superhuman hospital. It's like they go there because they're injured. Like these things come out
Yeah.
naturally through the course of the story.
Well, and the great thing about this, I realized this reading it this time. I hadn't realized it before, but the super hot nurses, where like the women, the girls are wearing this, or the women nurses are wearing the short skirt with the garters and like the little hats and the tiny little tops,
Mhm.
and the men are wearing these like half cut like one button, like their abs are out. They're wearing like basically just like
Booty
boxer
shorts.
briefs.
Yeah.
Those are their superpowers, is to be supernaturally good looking, because
Yeah,
you
well, during the
see it-
capies,
yeah,
when they
during the
Yeah, they get
nullify
all
their
fat.
powers, they
Yeah.
get fat.
And he makes reference to this in like one of the very early, like he makes reference to this, and then he totally, I think it totally could have been a thing where he just cast that aside, because Empowered's actually asking, where do they find all you amazingly good-looking people? And he's like, oh, you don't know? And then something happens and it
Yeah.
never gets followed up on. And then he doesn't tell you. He never, like, the way he follows up is he shows you in this
Right.
later,
Yeah.
in the later volume, which I think is great.
Well, I also
So-
think it pokes fun at the fact that like all superheroes are really good looking.
Yeah,
and it's like
absolutely.
with what is it, Spooky Sister?
Sister
Sister
Spooky.
Spooky.
Sister Spooky.
Yeah, she
Spookums.
she got her powers through a deal with the devil, which is how all the hot popular girls got their good looks in high school, and then an accidental power transfer made her like super strong,
Yeah.
like super magic. So.
Right, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of other heroes, they say explicitly, got their powers from like alien venereal
STDs,
disease.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, and I like the fact that a lot of these people is like, yes, I have superpowers, yes, this is my job, but I'm not a good person. Like,
Right.
Mhm.
Captain Havoc,
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
they intimate numerous times used to be a supervillain and just changed sides because he could
Yeah.
make more money as a hero.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well,
So one thing I wanted to talk about with the world building, I mean, well, not really want to talk about, but a little anecdote, is I actually finished volume 7 last night at 2 in the morning, and I was so tempted to text Joe and say, "Fuck you, Joe," because you got me to read this, and now I want more.
Yeah.
I want to find out what happens in San Antonio. There are lots of things that were left that he was building up to, and now I don't get to read the rest of it until December when the new trade comes
we
out.
started reading it right after Volume 6 came out, so we had to wait for Volume 7.
I read it
Uh-huh.
right after Volume 7 came out, so I've had to wait a year plus now for Volume 8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
December
I
is
finished
coming
it.
out.
I finished volume 7 today and was like,
I
damn
did-
it, now I want
I did
the
too,
next
this
one.
I actually think we have a theory. We were talking about this. Me and Kirby
Mhm.
have a theory that the series will end with the fight against Wile E. Pete. And I actually have a dream. After reading this again, there's this great kind of interlude in the middle of volume 7 between the devil goat and Ninjet, where for the first time since he's been introduced, he talks to her like a normal person. Like he uses pronouns and does
Mhm.
not refer to himself. And it's like, it's one of those moments where you're just like, wow, this was like intensely touching and intensely
Mhm.
emotional. But I finished it and I put down 7 and I was like, if Adam Warren is smart, he'll give me what my dream is. And my dream is I want the caged demon goat
Demon
to
wolf.
like demon wolf. Well, the devil
Yeah.
goat. And they call him like 8 different things.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
whatever.
And the other thing that's great is also they start talking like him to him. So they'll start doing this
Mhm.
alliteration to him. And it's great how he becomes like, he's just in this belt that sits on her coffee table, but he becomes just a biggest part of the story as
Yeah.
everybody else. So it's really great. He doesn't even have a body.
That actually dovetails with the 2 complaints that I do have about this series. One is that it has a tendency to be incredibly fucking wordy.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, on the reread, there are definitely sections, particularly Demon Wolf sections, where I just kind of skimmed over it because I was like, I know what happens.
Mhm.
There's so much fucking text on this page. I don't want to read it all. I'm just going to skip ahead to the next part where something happens.
Mhm.
Which I'm going to call you on because you read Homestuck, which is infinitely more wordy.
Yeah, but it's not text bubble. Or it's not word bubbles, it's text.
No, it's literally walls of text, which is worse.
I think it's different.
It's like, I don't want a novel in my comic book, thank you very much. If I wanted to read a novel, I would
At
go
least
out and
it's
buy a
not as bad
novel.
as subnormality.
That's true, but I also like subnormality, so.
Yeah, so you have no room to judge me.
I do. I have all the room to judge you.
No.
All the room to judge. This whole room I have to judge you.
All right, the rest of us are gonna take 5. You guys.
There, well, let me talk about the other
Let's
thing.
talk about Cars, Toby. Let's talk about Disney's and Pixar's Cars.
The one other thing that does bother me is how everyone in this
record.
comic is a huge nerd. Everybody makes D&D references. Everybody
Yeah.
watches anime. Like everyone in this comic book just basically loves all nerd references, and that doesn't quite seem realistic to me.
I don't think they all watch. I mean, the running joke is that everybody is into, like, all the women characters are into yaoi. I mean, I don't get very many anime references in there. It's just the yaoi references, and I think that's hilarious because I think that's done quite deliberately because
They talk about reading manga and fanfic.
Yeah.
Like,
they-
how many
Yes.
people do you
Well,
know
but-
who honestly read fan fiction?
Too many.
Well, I think that
Yeah, but
I mean,
we're huge
this is
nerds.
also a world in which you can get your degree in superhuman studies. So
Yeah, I did
think
like-
Excuse me, suprahuman.
No, that's what I said. I corrected myself.
You said super.
I said supra,
Oh,
and
my God.
the record will get my
I'm
back
leaving
on that.
again.
Okay.
Well, I do like all the D&D references, like
Yeah, I did too.
when
The
they're
D-
like
the
talking
D10.
about, they're talking about power levels and whatever. Like it suddenly devolves into like
The thing
dice
that
talk.
the thing that always got me was the D10 space station.
Mhm.
Like I can understand making that reference, but I can't imagine that they'd actually call it that.
Well, yeah, and it's shaped like
Shaped like a
D10.
Well, I
10-sided
think
die.
I mean
Yeah.
it's one of the few times when I'm like, it's not pandering, it's homage, right? He's like, oh, somebody, it's entirely conceivable that somebody saw that in one of the earlier volumes before he calls it that, and it's like, totally looks like a D10, and he's like, oh yeah, that'd be pretty funny.
Well, I also just
And
think
there's also sorry.
you just write what you know too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shirts also got me too, where it's like strength natural.
That's one of my
18.
favorite things. I wish I had a shirt.
Not
that
just
was like-
18, but 18 parentheses 00, which if you ever played second edition D&D is the highest strength that you can have normally
Yes.
without magic.
Without magical strength.
But just the fact that they would go to that, like this is a bunch of like muscle-bound dudes with high explosives and guns, and they're throwing out like very nerdy second edition Dungeons and Dragons references.
See, and that's
I-
something that
I've
endears it to. I love that.
I think that should be the case all the time.
Yeah, like
I mean, one of the biggest muscle-bound action stars that's still kind of around, Vin Diesel, is the biggest Dungeons and Dragons nerd
That is true.
ever. Like, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I think that like a world where they are more where it's more common is the world that we're moving towards. Because I think with comic books becoming so much more popular, and comic book movies and video games are a huge industry now, a video game release will make more than a box office release in Hollywood. Like, that's insane. Like, I think that we're just going towards a nerdier world.
I can't disagree with that. It's just something that I notice a lot in webcomics.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it always bothers me because it's like, yeah, maybe I get a reference to this one fucking random ass anime, but in the grand scheme of the population, like how many people is that true of?
Well, and also you're writing for
See,
your
that's-
readers too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because like you want to throw all those references in. Like if you totally want to make in jokes with your readers, and if your readers are reading you, it's probably because they're familiar with manga or with these kind
That's
of
something that
genres.
I really liked about it, though. I liked looking for, like, because the drawings are so detailed and everything,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
looking for the little things that were, like, nerdy or, like, referencing. Like, there's one that I got so excited about because Thug Boy's wearing the shirt with the King of the Cosmos from Katamari on it. And I was like,
they mentioned Katamari a couple
yeah, they
times.
do the Katamari thing. And that was super exciting for me because I was like, I love Katamari. They love Katamari, too. We should be friends, so.
Well, I just think the thing that I find hilarious is you're like, Toby is one of the only people that I know that would be mad because he's being pandered to
Exactly.
rather than being ignored. He's like, oh, you made that joke for me? Fuck you, buddy. Fuck you right in your ass.
Well, I mean,
But these are minor complaints in the grand
well,
scheme of things.
I do think there's some weight to the idea that like over pandering can be tiresome.
No, and I
Like
agree.
if
I
every
agree.
single pay, like, if every single comic was doing this, if
Right.
every single video game was like,
Well, it turns
hey,
into the Big Bang Theory at that
remember
point.
8-bit?
It's like,
We'll throw 8-bit
Right.
shit into every video
Yeah.
game. Like, you'd get tired of it.
Actually, I think the Big Bang Theory is the perfect analogy to make, because in the Big Bang Theory, nerds are the punchline,
not
Right.
yeah.
not the setup. to
There's
the
a
joke.
difference between nerds being the joke and nerdy humor.
Right.
And
And so I think that this walks the line a little bit at times, where it's like, and here's a random geek reference, and you should find that funny because you're a geek.
Well, right, but I think that it does still, like, it's still something that you have to know about to get the in-jokes.
Yeah.
Like, the
Yeah.
D&D stuff, a lot of it's going to go straight over my head.
I didn't get that one. I didn't get the
don't think
D&D
it
one.
does- I don't think it does more than like Earthworld did, where it was also these kind of references that he was throwing out that some
right,
of them.
but the whole thing in Earthworld is that Parson Gotti is that big of a geek.
Right,
like,
well,
that's the
that's
whole
true, but
point
so
of the
is
story.
well, and Empowered is that big
Well,
of a geek.
and
Mhm.
the...
I mean, you
It
don't
seems-
think
but
she
it seems
took-
like everybody in that world is.
well,
maybe they
like,
are.
That's
All
the
the
people
random
that-
super homies are making these
Yeah.
references.
Yeah.
Those are the people they hang out with, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
going into like somebody else's, like their neighbor's house, and you know, going.
It just
like-
it seems weird to me.
Yeah.
I
Like
think-
I guess.
it was an odd note. It
But
stood out.
But I love it. Like,
Yeah, I do too.
totally, I
Like,
love
I
all the
don't-
jokes and, like, just the detail to put little things like that in, because when I do catch the references, I laugh, you know, and it's funny and I enjoy it. And they aren't hitting you over the head with them, because I'm sure I missed,
See, I do
like,
feel hit over the
20
head with them.
But I feel like
Because
I
I
missed
caught
most
all
of
of them. Like, I am
Yeah.
that big of a geek that I
Right.
get all of those references.
So you should be
we
mad at
should
yourself then for
we
catching the
should-
references, because I didn't catch any of them, and I feel like the book was great.
I guess I'm mad at Adam Warren for being as big a geek as I am.
Yeah,
Self-hating geek.
I know. It's so
What
sad.
can I say?
I still think
Wait,
and
are you
that.
sure you're not empowered?
It's just, we heard it here first.
I feel like
But
that.
no, see, I have no like body image issues. I would have no problem wearing that suit. All of you have to look at me, not the other way around.
Well,
I
I
just
mean,
think,
unless you
know,
are empowered and you're using that jutsu thing to make yourself look like Tobias Panshin.
Eh,
Well, I'm thinking of him wearing that suit, and I happen to know that Toby is rather his suit, and so it would be
yeah, that would actually be
steel
kinda
wool
weird.
everywhere, everywhere.
I love the issue. They're like one of the very first issues. Something that really endeared me to the comic way back when I first looked through it was the issue where it's in the very first trade, and the thug captures her and is like, "Now take the suit off." And she takes the suit off, and
I
he's
know,
like,
this is
"I have
great."
exactly what I want now." And you think that it's this naked woman, and you're like, "Oh, great,
But-
another
yeah.
weird rapey male gaze joke." And then he's got the suit on, and it's like his
Yeah.
horrible junk is
This-
in your
yes,
face,
yes.
and his
And
chunky
that's-
body is like jiggling around, and he's like running around trying to think that he's now superpowered because
Yeah.
the suit doesn't work for anyone but her. But that's the moment you find that
It's-
out, which is
yeah.
another part of her power, and he does it in a humorous way. I like the way he writes
It's
like that.
this-
But he like
yeah.
kicks a wall and like breaks his leg essentially, and it's
That's
like,
this
ah!
wonderful like
Ah, it's so
leveling
good.
the playing field moment where you're like, oh, okay, and that precedes the nurses and
Oh yeah,
and
that's
all this,
right
like,
at the
Maid
beginning.
very,
Man, which
very
is
early.
Yeah.
one of my favorite characters, Maid Man,
Oh, I
who
love Maid
Oh,
Man.
Oh,
is
yeah.
the
Second
typical
favorite.
Japanese maid character, but he's a man.
Yeah.
And he refers to himself as gender neutral. It's like it's actually implied in one that it's a dual personality thing.
Well, and they do refer to him as transgendered.
Yeah, no,
actually.
totally, which I think is great, and he is one of Empowered's biggest, like most staunch supporters
Yeah.
in her superhero group, and it's great because he's flashing the panties everywhere, and it's like,
Which is
And
what's
he's
so great about the series is that he is one of the only real heroes in the series.
mhm.
And it's implied that like he actually has like everybody feels uncomfortable around him because of his eccentricities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The fact that he is dressed up like a maid, like they all think that that's really weird, but he really is this like stand-up guy.
Right,
Mhm.
he's a great hero, and I also love that it draws parallels to like Batman, where he's saying, I'm going to strike fear into the heart of criminals
yeah.
by
Right.
dressing up as something they're afraid of.
Yes.
Well, Maid Man dresses up as something that
They're afraid-
the
yeah.
Yeah,
male
is it that he
supervillain.
like
Totally.
say I'm the goddamn maid man?
I
I
wish.
think he might. I think he might.
I don't remember that, but I love the
No, I
interview
think-
episode with him, like when he's first introduced in that issue,
Mhm.
when he's doing the interview show, and he's only there to suss out this villain who's run away and become
Yeah.
the the interviewee or interviewer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so he, that's his introduction, and also it's in color, which is really bizarre because the page is not about him, but about.
I thought he
Empowered.
showed up first when he was disguised as Croquette.
Yeah, he does.
No way.
No, he totally shows up when he's described as croquet. With the wet,
Pretty
that's when
sure.
Wet Blanket is there, and like he rips off his disguise and saves Empowered.
What is? Wait, Croquet the crow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's way later. That's in the.
Is it? Wait,
that's-
is it later?
Yeah, that's with Wet Blanket, and they're in the.
Are you talking about the one is with the Hummer?
No.
The color, the one with.
No.
Yeah, there were a couple of color specials.
Well, maybe
there's
it's in a
only
special.
one. There's only one that's included with the volumes, though. There
maybe
are
that's why
one
we
shots
missed
in
it.
color that we didn't read.
Maybe it's.
Yeah.
Or don't you have those?
It is in the special, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Okay. But in chronological order, it comes way before the introduction of
Okay.
him. when he
Yeah.
They
takes
do
his costume.
include one color special at the beginning of volume 4.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
the one
only
that I
one
have.
that
Okay.
I have. Yeah.
The issue I'm talking about is hang on. It's Empowered Special 2011, Questions for the Maid Man, and that happens before the issues with where he's
May I
Croquet.
see that?
Right.
issue,
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
The cover is pretty amazing.
And it's in color when it's Maid Man, but it's in black and white when it's Empowered. It's a
Right.
really interesting issue.
Did you read the animal style? The
Yeah, with
single
the
issue?
Hummer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that just came
Yeah.
out earlier this year. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
And
March.
that's
That's
leading
special
up
number
to
4.
volume 8 coming out this December.
Yeah, I really like the issues that are colored. I think they're really interesting and fun, but I
Yeah.
would hate to lose the detail on the pencils by
Oh,
having
yeah,
this
no,
book
totally.
be recolored.
Well, the
mean,
thing
it's-
about those though is that other people are doing the art for it, and then like in the I didn't read that one because we just have the trades, so I
Mhm.
guess I just missed it. But like in the animal style one, it's like somebody else doing all the color stuff,
Right.
and then Adam Warren would draw her like explaining how when you're fighting somebody, you shouldn't destroy people's cars, and then it shows her destroying a car
Right.
because she's fighting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the color is really interesting on those issues, but
I think it's
would-
nice every once in a while, but
Yeah.
Adam Warren's artwork is definitely one of the things that makes this so.
Can I see it?
It makes
Yeah.
it feel. To me, it makes it feel like a much more personal work.
Mhm.
Yeah, it works because there's a certain, I want to say, cuteness to his art.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I think we need to talk about the fact that he is not just inspired by manga, but has worked in that medium. He did the American version of the Dirty Pair.
Mhm.
Which apparently
So-
actually like spins off in like a way different direction than the Japanese version.
Yeah.
Before we go off talking about something else, I did want to note for the viewers that Chart has a single issue that's not
Yeah.
printed in the trades, and that's
Yeah.
why we didn't know what he was
Yeah,
talking
it's
about.
Right,
special
right.
number 2.
It does look very fun, and it's something that I
It's-
want to read.
It's awesome.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite.
If there's anything that
Parts.
you missed, Cade, you should definitely check out everything that's been published.
Yeah,
It's
there's
all great.
4 specials, and I read 3 of them because I couldn't find special number 3.
Mm.
But this was special number 2.
Okay.
So
All right, so now continue on with your Dirty Pair.
Oh yeah, no. So this is, I mean, it's definitely not. So it's not just him like paying homage to that style. It's the style he works in, and I don't know that this would work as well in a more Western style. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
so much of it is kind of based in that. Not just the style, but the way of telling the story. And it
Mhm.
helps with these huge fight scenes, which is always, we've talked about this before. You know, when you have like this huge beatdown going on, it's really easy if you don't do it right to kind of lose the momentum. And that, I never feel like that happens. I always feel very caught up in the action that's going on in Empowered. And I think that's largely because he uses He's got the speed lines, and he uses that much more manga approach to the action. So you like, it catches me up in it.
And that's one of the
Especially
big draws about it. That's something that they even note on the back of each of the trades is that, he draws from this outside influence that makes it such a different book.
Yeah.
Well, and the
And that
action
is one of the
sequences.
draws.
Yeah, the action sequences are just like amazing sometimes.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the ninja fight between Ninjette and her clan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially
Yeah.
that
Like
one
both
that
of these.
Both of those
Yeah.
fight scenes are just like ridiculously good.
especially the one that I mentioned earlier where she is fully clothed. She doesn't
Yeah.
even have the ninjette booty shorts, but it's
Yeah.
like 6 or 7 pages, and it's just an incredible fight scene.
And it's
Yeah.
easy to follow like the operations of like what happens in what order, which is something that I find like confusing sometimes about
Yeah.
less skilled artists.
I also really like the fact that he doesn't publish these as individual issues, but he just
Yeah.
releases a trade like once a year.
Oh,
When
the
it's done, it's
ongoing-
done, and he
the
releases
ongoing
it.
graphic novel series that you've all
Well,
been
and
waiting
he also
for.
gets
Yeah,
really
right?
great. It allows for the inclusion of some of the great in jokes, like if Empowered has to like ladyscape, then why doesn't she walk around with like constant camel toe, or the appearance of Were Giraffe by Night, which is my personal favorite.
Oh yeah,
like,
he shows up too.
in joke, does he?
Yeah, he shows up in the back of the Capies, I think, because
yeah.
they mention it offhandedly. They're like, "Wait, was Were Giraffe in that?"
Were
issue?"
Giraffe by Night.
And,
I saw that and I was really looking forward to seeing him, and then they say he did appear and I was like, oh shit, really? And I was too lazy
I
to go
think
back
he's
and
just
look for
in
him,
the
but I wanted to
background.
see him.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess you'd have to just look for a giraffe.
yeah, basically.
But I like the fact that he's able to kind of tell an entire story at once.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, it also makes it more manga-like because manga in the U.S. is only released really as the collections. It's not released in the
Yeah.
in the
Which is a very U.S. thing because
Yeah.
in Japan they are released weekly.
Well, they're in big digests. Yeah, you don't see single issues in Japan, but you get magazines that have like 10 pages of 20 or 30 different books
Right.
at a time, and so you
Which are
pick
the
up,
size of trades.
They're huge. Yeah, you'll pick up like
Are they still
Shonen
printing
Jump.
Shonen Jump in the U.S.?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Because I
They're
remember
not
they
in
were
the
publishing
US.
it for a while. It was like $5 for this big, thick black and white
Yeah.
phone book with like 10 different
Right.
manga comics. in it.
At least, if not more
Well,
like
that would
20.
bug the crap out of me.
See,
'Cause
I
having
like
to
that.
track
I think
down, like, all those
I thought for a
stories.
while that the American companies should try doing something like
Well,
that.
I've said it several times before, but like now that Disney owns Marvel, I think there should be a Shonen Jump style.
Like digest.
Yeah, like there's
Well,
like
no,
I think
bigger
there,
than
there should be
digest.
like a Shonen Jump style like Avengers book where at the front you get an Avengers story, but then you get a Captain America story, and
Right.
a Hawkeye
And the
story, and a Thor
tie-ins,
story.
Yeah.
And so you could have, this month's Ultimates where it has Ultimate Comics Spider-Man,
Yeah.
then the next issue is Ultimate Comics X-Men.
Well, they
Right.
used to do that in MCP. They used to do that in Marvel Comics Presents,
Right.
which were stories about characters that couldn't necessarily sustain their own book,
Right.
which is hilarious because at one point that was Wolverine.
But what I think is more interesting would not be to do characters that are in mainstream continuity,
Yeah.
but to do the all ages stories about the
Right,
characters.
that's
that
what
are
I'm
in. So
saying.
it's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
because it should be like Disney presents Marvel Comics, The Avengers, or something, and they're all ages stories that you can buy in a checkout stand in
Yeah,
a grocery line.
absolutely.
And if
then,
you could
like-
buy a phone book for $5, the value of that is so much
Yeah,
higher.
it's like
Mhm.
spend $5 and give it to your kid, and holy shit, that's gonna keep them entertained for days and days.
Yeah,
well,
right.
and
And
it'll
then
just,
at the end of the year for the real collectors, like you could pick up like, oh, I really like the Captain America stories from the Avengers anthology
Right.
this year, so I'm just gonna pick up the trade of just the Captain America
Right.
stories, and maybe like they're in color and printed larger.
right.
Like, there's a lot of room there to try different things.
Well,
Mhm.
and just the biggest thing that's going on in the industry right now, we talk about this every episode, but is there aren't enough kids reading comics. And that's how every single person here at the table, with the exception, Kirby, you read comics when you were a kid, though, right?
I read
mean, you
manga when I was
right?
a kid.
But it's that,
She liked.
Which
speaking
you're
of
not alone
yaoi.
in.
no.
Actually, there are a lot of younger girls
Mhm.
that have been just buying manga like crazy.
Oh, that's
yeah,
what they
a
bought.
lot
which
of
is
them.
why there's such a big selection of manga in like Barnes and Noble
Right.
now.
Yeah.
It's because the
Well-
younger girls are going for those things.
Well,
And
yeah.
they were, I remember when I was buying them, because I would spend like all my allowance on them, because it's like, they're like $10, and you
And
like
you-
go and you
yeah,
get, it was like
exactly.
super cheap, and you would get like this cool thing, and you know.
Well, it's easy to follow too because you're like, okay, I'll buy One Piece number 1. What comes after that? Well, One Piece 2. What's
Yeah.
after that? One Piece 3. As if in direct opposition to that, the American comic book companies are like, nope, take the numbers off of all of our books in Barnes and Noble because they won't sell if you can't print number 1 anymore.
Right.
And every like 4 trades, you're gonna have to buy 6 other trades to find out what's going on during these crossovers. So
Right.
the American comic industry, because of its like, what I love about it is its continuity and how the books all live in a shared universe actually can be detrimental to getting new readers into the book sometimes.
Yeah, at one
Mm-hmm.
point a few weeks ago, I was looking for Daredevil, and there's like 3 or 4 different Daredevil Volume 1s.
Yeah.
Because there's the Mark Waid Daredevil Volume 1, and there's the Frank Miller Daredevil Volume
Mhm.
1, and
And a
there's
lot
I
of-
think there was, the Bendis Daredevil
Well,
Volume 1.
it was. Yeah, actually, there should be more than just 3 because it was.
But this is what, like,
Yeah.
like when I searched on Amazon for Daredevil, like, that's what came up. And there were a
Right.
bunch of Volume 1s, and it's like, how do I know which one to get or what order these
Right,
come in if
'cause-
I'm not, like, a sophisticated consumer?
And
Yeah,
also, just
and
like.
you really have to look inside because it'll say like Daredevil Volume 5, Issue 1, because it's the 5th time that they rebooted the numbering.
But also, you might
Mhm.
not necessarily want to read it in chronological order because to get from the earliest printing of Daredevil to now would take you
There's
for.
several hundred comic books.
It's a lot of reading, and unless you're just a diehard Daredevil fan, to get caught up on what's going on in modern continuity, you don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
I actually really missed those black and white essential books. I saw some at Joe's the other day, and
Oh,
I
they're great.
have the first 7 of the Amazing Spider-Man ones. I mean, because this was before they came out with those CD-ROMs that had
Yeah.
every issue of Spider-Man ever published
Yeah,
on them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I started buying those, and so I have like the first 220 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and I really miss those.
They still print those. They
do.
They're still around, and DC has the DC
Oh,
Select, which is their equivalent,
The
but
library editions.
No, they're the same size as the Marvel
Oh, I know. what you're
Essentials,
talking- Yeah.
but they're not chronological like the Marvel Essentials are.
No, they're just select stories.
Right, which is actually kind of better because a lot of those old DC stories are pretty
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do include what I would consider the best one. Like, I think they did a good job of picking the stories,
Mm.
you know. But what I was going for there was we all started reading comics when we were kids in one form or another, and I don't think that as an adult I would have been as likely to get into comics had I not started when I was a kid. And there was a time where I stopped reading comics, and to get back into it was pretty easy because I knew what I was getting in for.
Yeah,
Like, I knew
exactly.
how back issues worked, I knew how continuity worked, I knew that sometimes I would go to the store and buy an issue of Batman and have no idea what was going on because it had been continued from an issue of Catwoman. Like, I knew what to expect going in.
Right.
And if you don't,
Yeah.
if you didn't have that as a kid, like, it's kind of hard to get into comics
That's
sometimes
overwhelming.
as an adult. And so I think that the more kids reading comics, the better off we are.
Well, that's why Marvel with their 500 with their .1s are really doing a great service.
Well,
is-
yeah, I agree, but there are not enough.
I mean, there needs to be more.
there's not
I
enough all
agree.
ages books that aren't talking down.
Yeah,
to
I was
kids.
actually thinking about this just recently, and it's like there's the all ages stuff, like the
Mhm.
Marvel Adventures or whatever,
Mhm.
and that's well and good. But as a parent looking for a comic to give your kid, like, you have no idea just looking at something on the shelf whether there's going to be like graphic violence or lots of sex or what have you
Well, they do
in just any random superhero book.
They do have their little rating system on the cover. But it's what drives me crazy is it's similar to like the video game rating system where it's like M and T and V and
Right.
TV, and you're like, what does this even mean?
TV.
Like, why don't we just use the same
TBD.
rating system that people are most familiar with, which is that of the motion pictures? Like, if you
Right.
saw R on something and it said R extreme violence, you'd be like, okay, I'm not really gonna pick this up for my kids. Thanks,
Yeah.
Walking Dead. I'll put you back. But because it doesn't say that, there are so many people that like want to pick those up for their kids, not knowing. and it's confusing. And I mean, like, as a parent, it's your job to do the research, but that's still
Well,
the company
doesn't
should
mean they're
make
going
it.
to.
It doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
going to, and the company should make it easier for you.
Definitely. I think as a parent, being the only person here that is actually a parent.
Why is that an accusation?
No, you guys were saying as
Hey,
a
you
parent,
don't-
and I thought it.
You
Well,
don't
I mean,
know.
like, I don't-
I mean, I probably have lots of kids.
I mean,
everywhere.
she left last week. I haven't seen her.
Well, yeah, you may not be a parent anymore.
I may not be. That's fine though. I mean, that's like the circle of life, right? That's what I
Right.
got from The Lion King.
Yeah.
You know,
Sometimes
I
they
told her
run
that
away, and you don't
everything
see
the
them.
light touches was somewhere that wasn't home, and she was like, "What about that shadowy area?" And I was like,
Don't go there.
That's Shelton. Don't go there.
Wow,
Teasing
that's a
Sarah.
joke that 5 people are gonna get.
Yeah, well, hey, you know what?
They're all listening to
I'm
the
gonna-
show,
and they're
so-
all gonna hate me because they just listened to you talk about how you hate to be pandered to. But I think the thing that really gets me about it is that there are so many other publishers publishing books for young adults. There's actually a lot of young adult comic books out
Mhm.
there, and all ages comic books. They're just not coming from where they should be coming from.
I agree.
You know, it's the fact that Marvel really, DC. We've been talking a lot about how they want the biggest slice of this kind of imaginary reader pie, right? And so they're willing to screw over all their other demographics just so that they can get the biggest concrete piece.
They're like readers 30 to
And
40.
yeah,
essentially.
and Marvel is
Which
kind
none
of
yeah.
trying to make it friendly to new readers by doing the point ones and stuff.
Mhm.
But both of them are ignoring that the fact that future readers are going to they should learn. I hate to say this, they should learn from the tobacco industry, right? Hook them when they're young.
Yeah, it's sad,
Well,
but
no,
true.
I mean that's totally the thing. Like, let's have look at an imaginary 7 or 8-year-old girl who watched the Teen Titans cartoon and loves
Yeah.
Starfire and wants to read about Starfire. Is she gonna pick up an issue of Red Hood and the Outlaws?
Yeah, right.
No.
No,
No.
because I'm not going to let her.
She's gonna go
We're gonna find that
down to the
7-year-old girl and we're gonna
Borders
stop
or the
her.
Barnes and Noble and she's gonna pick up a manga.
Yeah,
because it's
absolutely.
written for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because she can find similar characters drawn in a similar style, telling similar stories. And that's
Like the younger audience exists. Marvel and to a much greater extent DC are just not willing to tap into
well,
it
and that's yeah.
as much as they could.
and
Right.
other publishers are.
Well, and I
mean,
think it would be easy too. I legitimately think that with digital distribution and the checkout style, oversized manga, phone book style thing that,
Mhm.
that DC and Marvel could easily both be doing, it's so easy for them to tap young readers now. And they have
Oh,
great
absolutely.
writers that could write stories, and then editorial will just go, hey, it would be cool if that guy's throat didn't get cut in this issue, just have him fall over. Suddenly it's all ages appropriate, and the
Right.
story doesn't need to be any less complex. It just needs to be less violent and with less, sexual overtones. And I think that that's
Correct me if
fine.
I'm wrong. Isn't there a subscription option in like Comixology or some of these the online
Yeah.
platforms? Like, it would totally be possible as a parent to be like, okay, subscribe to this book. Here you go, little Jimmy. Like every week on my iPad, there'll be a new issue for you.
Oh, totally.
Like so little effort.
Well, yeah, and just the market of the tablets, but also just like the Steam-based distribution style or Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network. Like if the comic book industry was more willing to work with that kind of stuff and try to get comics on your television, on your computer, on your tablet, they're gonna reach millions more people than they're reaching in the comic book store because there are only 900 to 1,200 comic book stores left.
Yep.
It's
Oh,
not
yeah,
a very
if-
big audience.
If I had the option to read comics on my huge ass TV, I totally would.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
only if I could do it with that new smart TV and I could use my hand to turn the pages.
You can do that with the Kinect.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, there's software out there that will,
Are you
like,
saying I should?
make-
Are you a?
I don't want you to buy a Kinect. I
You
don't
want
want
me to
that.
buy-
I don't
you
want
just- you
one.
just
I don't
said
want
that
one
I
either.
should.
But you
You
said
just-
you wanted to swipe it, so you
No,
have to buy a
Samsung
Kinect now.
has a new smart TV that you can talk to and control with your hand and stuff.
So it's a Kinect built
It's
into the
basically,
TV.
yeah, totally.
Okay. Well,
I
all
mean,
right. I'm just saying the technology exists for you to
So-
enjoy this in a lot of different mediums, and you should. And the comic book industry
point
needs
is,
to take advantage of that.
as it always is when we talk about these things, that we know what's going on. We should be doing these things because, like, clearly fucking Dan DiDio has no idea what's going on. Like, I
would
think
just-
that's pretty fucking clear.
I would just love to see just tomorrow They're like, oh, we've fired Dan DiDio, and
We're
the
hiring.
new VP is Joe Preddy. Can we please come forward? And I just want to see DC plummet into the ground during your leadership.
But it would be awesome.
It would be fury. It would be like a descent of fury, but
It would be amazing.
entertaining. I would
They would be
definitely
like,
read
nobody's
every
reading
book.
these, but they are widely considered some of the best stories ever.
It would be like
And the
Bryn-
most terrifying.
like when Brody took over the Tonight Show.
Uh-huh.
There's 2 Kevin Smith references for you.
There you go.
That was pretty good.
Actually, I guess the first one was probably before we started recording.
Oh, yeah. I think it was. I don't know. It might be on here. I'll dig for it.
So I did have a question for you because we were talking about the all ages comics, and so I got into the Ultimate Universe when it was first coming out, and it was aimed for a teenage audience. I did get out like 60 issues into Ultimate Spider-Man, and I have a question for you guys if you guys kept reading after that. But are the new Ultimate comics still teenage appropriate comics? This could be something that
never
are-
thought-
I
they
only
were.
I only pick up Ultimate Spider-Man now and then, and by pick up I don't mean actually buy. I mean pick it up in the store and flip through it.
Mhm.
And it seems about on the same level
I think it
as
is
it's always
still
been. I didn't know that
intended.
Ultimates was ever intended for teen readers though.
Yeah, because
I never heard
they
that.
have like
Well,
Quicksilver and Wanda.
It
like,
was intended
banging
for
each other.
new
Yes.
readers to get into the book,
Right,
and they
right.
wanted to make it teen
Well,
appropriate.
Ultimate
so
Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men were originally definitely intended for
right,
teens.
right.
they were rated.
Well, I think
G.
Spider-Man is a great character for doing that because he lends himself very well to telling stories that don't have to
Yeah,
be.
and the X-Men definitely had a lot of like that whole, kind of teen angst Twilight stuff in it. There were a lot of the character interactions where it was like, Jean Grey's, oh, I have feelings for this guy, I have feelings for this guy. And it was definitely something that was relatable to teenagers. So,
I'm just. I'm sorry. I just recently discovered a web comic called Scott and Jean that sums up my feelings about Jean Grey pretty well. The first one is she's on the couch.
You
and-
linked that one to me.
Yeah, no,
it's the Phoenix.
She's on the couch and Scott's in the kitchen and she's like, Scott, can you get me some more iced tea? And he's like, I'm not in the kitchen anymore. So and she's like,
She asked him for a cream soda, and she's like, he's like, Gene, I'm cutting carrots right now. Like, my
Right.
hands are dirty. Can't you do it yourself?
and
she's like, I'm getting weaker.
she's holding this glass like with ice in it, and she's like, Scott, please, I can't hold it up much longer. And he's like, Gene, you're being dramatic. And then it falls and breaks, and she like, it's just really, yeah. I think it really.
Well, yeah, I think the one that I read that you sent me was the one where she's like, it was the
It was
Phoenix.
the Phoenix.
when
yeah.
she buys shoes on sale.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that one, yeah.
Gene, I told you not to buy anymore. I told you that we couldn't afford you going shopping. I didn't do it. Well, what are all these shoes and clothes in here?
It's,
It must have been the Phoenix.
yeah, so go find that, Scott and Jean.
Scott and
It's
Jean.
funny.
I'll post it on the Facebook page.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
or the Twitter too.
we've talked about the modern comics industry a lot recently.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think we've definitely nailed it. Is there anything else about Empowered that we want to talk about?
I feel like I'm pretty good on it.
Yeah,
I
I'm-
think it's definitely worth everybody checking
yeah,
out.
and I think
Assuming that you can handle a little
Yeah.
bit of, modest nudity and softcore pornography.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think about who I would recommend this to, but then I'm like, well, obviously all my friends that enjoy manga and enjoy the kind of more interpersonal relationship stuff
Mhm.
like Scott Pilgrim, Strangers in Paradise, like people who like that kind of stuff I think would dig on
Absolutely.
Empowered. So
Absolutely.
it is kind of a niche thing, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but
Yeah,
I
no,
do think
I would
that a lot of my
rather-
friends would really enjoy it actually.
I do want to say that we talk about I think we have we all have individual kind of nitpicks, but I think we all have very similar kind of gripes about bad comics and about bad writing in general and how that can really ruin a series or a character. And what really strikes me about Empowered is how I think he deftly avoids all of those things. by writing good characters.
Well, he's a great writer.
I avoided it for a long time because I thought it was just
It's
sexy
very
pinup girls
easy,
and lowbrow jokes, and it's definitely not that.
Yeah.
So much more.
Like, I'm kicking myself for not having read it sooner.
And that's the thing, and this is why it was really important for me to, there are other series that I like more, probably. There are other series that maybe I wanted to talk about more because I've been into them longer. But we don't have a very big listenership right now, but I wanted to do this first and foremost to say, if you have passed this book by in your local comic store and you have looked at it and thought, oh, that's just bullshit, damsel in distress or cheesecake pinup bullshit, you could not be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people pass up this book because of that. And you're really denying yourself a great opportunity.
Yeah.
So read
I
it.
would put this up there with Invincible as one of the best superhero books.
Absolutely.
Definitely
today.
ongoing best
Yeah.
superhero books,
And
for
I
sure.
mean, if you like us, like good stories told with great characters that you can really get behind and root for in a really well fleshed out world, then there's no reason you should not be reading Empowered.
Is there anything you wanted
And
to add, Kirby?
December 2013 could not come any
Yeah,
sooner.
exactly. We are all counting the days.
Like I said at the beginning, is that when Joe brought it home, because I don't remember, you just brought a bunch of comics home, which was normal,
That's
and
what I did.
and I was just like, oh, another one of these, really? And then I don't know why I picked it up and started reading it.
I told you to.
Well, you told me, but I don't know why I actually did
Right,
it
right.
because I don't
You
listen
never
to you.
do.
I never.
what Joe
Yeah.
says.
Usually I do the opposite, but then I read it. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. I guess I'll go get the next one. And then eventually we ended up with all of them, and now I'm waiting for the 8th. So
Yep.
yeah, it's definitely something I really enjoyed reading, and I thought was important because there are not a lot of female superheroes that have that same kind of mentalities and thought processes, and most of them, they're already superheroes, and they're not kind of growing and turning into, what they are now.
Yeah.
So I really like that it's a growing story for her.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Awesome.
I think we said most of what we wanted to say about
Yeah.
Empowered.
I think so.
So let's do our recommendations of if you liked Empowered.
Right.
You would
So
probably like.
if you haven't listened to our first episode of the Long Run, because we're only doing these every few months because
Right.
it takes longer to read,
Mhm.
rather than doing our normal thing of voting on a book, we're just picking an order. So everybody, except for the person who's going to be picking our next Long Run topic, has brought, if you liked Empowered, you might like this, or
Right.
you should check this out.
So if you're
Yeah.
playing along and you just finished reading Empowered and you're starving for more Empowered, like we all are, this might be something to tide you over.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll start then.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we talked about how Empowered is a great deconstruction of the superhero genre
Right.
and how it makes fun of certain aspects of the superhero world, but it does it from a place of love. And I think the first book I read that did that was a book that came out in 1988 called The Tick by Ben Edlund. And I think we all around the table have some kind of love for The Tick, whether it's through the comic or through the TV show,
There
the
was a
cartoon,
cartoon.
or the live action. Tick is great, and I'll try to summarize it, but I don't know that I can really do it other than just say go experience it in one of those forms. But The Tick was originally published by New England Comics, which was a comic book store that Ben Edlund worked for. And so he was working in the store, and he was drawing and writing this comic about this superhero called The Tick in a very deconstructed superhero world where there are a lot of wacky superheroes in a very similar way to Empowered. There's, I can't remember her name in the cartoon, but Lady Liberty,
American Made.
American Made
Yeah.
and Deflator Mouse.
Deflator Mouse, and then there's
Sea Urchin.
there's
Let's-
the Carpeted Man has always been my favorite
Yeah, no,
Tick
it's-
hero, but there are a bunch of these very strange heroes living in this world that is basically just one city named The City. And the Tick has decided that, and he's a giant blue muscle-bound guy dressed up like a tick. He's got little antennae on his head, and he decides that it's his sworn duty to protect the city from all things that are trying to destroy it. And he, as they say in the first issue, is super strong, nigh invincible, but has the mental capacity of topsoil. So he is
Isn't he nigh invulnerable?
nigh invulnerable. That's what it is. Yeah, he's real dumb, but he gets by. He's just like Conan, except he doesn't learn anything.
I think my favorite Tick moment is when he's talking to this guy, Samurai Neil, who's from Japan, and he's like, I don't have enough money to get home. And the Tick just reaches into his costume and pulls out a wad of bills, and he's like, oh, here you go. And then he like flips out because he's like, wait a minute, I have pockets? Because he doesn't realize that he's wearing a costume.
Yeah.
Like he is just the Tick.
Right.
Like he doesn't wear clothes. He never takes the costume off. Like he just thinks that's his skin or something.
Yeah, people ask him like, "What's with the costume?" And he's like, "I don't understand what you're talking about." And my favorite is in the very early issues of the Tick. The first volume is 13 issues that spanned like a lot of years. Like it took a long time, 7 years for the 13th issue to come out. And at the very beginning of this, it's also a black and white series, by the way, like Empowered. But at the beginning, it's been recolored since then. The very beginning, he wakes up on the train tracks. He doesn't know how he got there, and he's in the subway. And this guy, who's a news reporter, who has glasses and a black curly Q, and his name is Clark, goes to save him. He's like, oh, a citizen is on the train tracks. He's like, citizen, let me save you. And then they both get hit by the train because the Tick is like not responding well, and they like can't figure it out. And then they're both like, oh, I guess you're also invulnerable. Or he's like, are you invulnerable? And he's like, I'm nigh invulnerable.
The best part to me was the follow-up of that. Because he sees that the guy Clark has hypnotic disguise glasses, which means that they're regular glasses with like a little spinny circle on the bridge. And so he's like, I should get some of those. And so he goes to a clothing store and he's like, hypnotic disguise tie. And there's a tie with that little spinny circle. And he actually grabs the tie next to it, which just has a flower print on it. And he's like, he puts it on and he expects that he's then disguised and he gets really confused. He's just like, why? Like, how did you see through my hypnotic disguise tie?
Yeah, he goes to work. He gets Clark's card and he's like, I should go work at this news. I need a secret identity as well. I'll go work undercover at this news agency. And so he goes out to pick out his disguise and it's just the tie. Like he doesn't.
Actually, if you have never experienced Ben Edlund at all, he has been a collaborator with Joss Whedon a lot over the years. They worked together on Angel and Firefly. Mm-hmm. He wrote the episode, I think, Janestown in Firefly.
Oh, nice.
He also created Bad Horse from Dr. Horrible, which was originally supposed to be a villain on Angel.
And he is currently writing on Supernatural.
Yeah, like he's done a lot of TV work over the years.
And he is responsible for introducing Doc Hammer to Jackson Public and thus creating the Venture Brothers. And he's one of the only people that's ever written an episode of the Venture Brothers besides those two, which is the Scooby-Doo parody episode. So if you like any
which
of
actually
those
dug
things,
out the whole clone thing again because they were not planning on doing anything else with that.
In the commentary, they're like, "We're glad Ben brought it back because we kind of forgot about it. We kind of just had like set it aside." So Ben Edlund is like a great mind in the world of creative stuff going on, and the Tick is one of my favorite things that he's created. It's a great superhero story. It's just bizarre. It's funny, but it does have some heart in places. Like there are like really great character moments.
Yeah, no, they really
especially in like the TV show and the cartoon, which would like flush out a lot of the ideas from the comic, because there are actually more episodes of the TV show, I think, of the cartoon than there are issues of the comic. So it's the Tick is something that I think you would enjoy if you like kind of wackier, fun superhero stuff.
I thought it was actually great.
I was gonna recommend Invincible because basically if you like a superhero book.
Actually, the Tick and Invincible were the first two things I thought of when I'm trying to think of things to recommend.
Yeah, I just think like if you like a superhero book and you haven't read Invincible,
I also remember.
What's wrong with you?
What the fuck is wrong with you? Stop listening.
Get your
Go
shit
out
together.
And get Invincible and read it. God.
I also remember that growing up, the Tick cartoon, it was a very well done cartoon in that it could be for kids. Kids would really enjoy it, and then like even my dad, sitting on the couch, would laugh too.
The live action Tick show is like one of my dad's favorite shows, which I think is so bizarre, but it's so good.
It took me a while to wrap my head around the live action show, but it won me over.
Yeah.
Probably because of
I've never
Batman
actually watched it.
Oh,
Me
you should. It's
either.
only 13 episodes, super short. It's really
Batman
funny.
was what ended up.
Who plays the mayor in the Dark Knight trilogy?
He does he was like everywhere for a while, and people would be like, oh, he's from this show, and I'm like, no, that's Batman.
Yeah, that's how I always think of him too.
Because for some reason they call it, I don't know why they couldn't call him
Deflator Mouse. Yeah, I don't know.
There were reasons.
Yeah.
I'm sure but
I feel like there was some weird rights thing between the cartoon version and the live action version where they couldn't use those characters because the people who had the rights to the cartoon still had the rights to those.
Yeah, that actually, that happens. That actually Jill Thompson just got the rights back to Scary Godmother after leasing them to an animation company. And now so that's why, she would say, people would come up to her and be like, why haven't you done any more Scary Godmother stuff? And she'd be like, well, I don't own the rights anymore. So she just got them back, so now she can start doing that again. So it's probably something similar.
Yeah, I think it was also funny that this ran on Fox Kids back in the day, in the 90s, 95 or 96. At the same time that X-Men and Spider-Man were running.
Yeah, I used to watch all of those.
Yeah, and it's so bizarre.
And the Tick was like fucking miles. Like the Tick, I definitely place up there with Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, well
like X-Men tried, but they just did not have a budget.
They definitely lacked something in the budget department, but that cartoon made me love X-Men more than I think any individual comic.
I think my thing was that I loved X-Men at that point, and I could not.
Well, the fact that it had so much continuity for a cartoon of that time was like very odd.
Right.
It just kind of, in the first episode, they have, I think Storm and Rogue are out shopping.
Yeah.
And like they get attacked by a Sentinel, and Storm's just like, costume change with lightning. I'm like, you can't fucking do that.
That was awesome.
You don't have that fucking ability.
It was so cool though.
I'm much more lax now, but
it's great. She's just at the top of the escalator. And
I
still can picture that scene in my head.
When could she do that? She could never do that.
And she gives like a little speech too.
Yeah.
About how awesome she is.
Most of the voice actors in that show were really good too, I thought. For those characters, especially Storm.
I mean,
if you compare it to the previous attempt to make an X-Men cartoon, Pride of the X-Men, like head and shoulders above it. I mean, just the fact that Wolverine wasn't Australian for no reason was enough to love that show.
But Pride of the X-Men did spawn the X-Men arcade machine.
That's true,
so
which was awesome.
It's worth it for that. But
what's the line? Welcome to die.
I feel like the one thing they got right in the X-Men cartoon was Wolverine, because I don't care how good Hugh Jackman is. I cannot accept a beautiful 6'1" man as Wolverine, because that's not what he is.
I like this. It's like early in the show when he's mad at Scott for something, and Morph has died.
I made you a convertible.
Yeah, and he cuts the top off the car.
No, he doesn't even cut it off. He pops his claws, and he goes up and he just like, and it like just flies off. Like, there's no conceivable way he could have done that, because he never cuts it.
That's so good. But yeah, I mean, I think that we wouldn't have shows. We obviously wouldn't have Venture Brothers without Ben Edlund's influence. No. And also, one of the two guys on Venture Brothers was a writer on the cartoon show of the Tick too. So, but we definitely wouldn't have other shows that parody superheroes in quite as good of a way either. I don't think we would have had like Freakazoid or Danny Phantom or like any of that stuff without the Tick like breaking ground on that superhero.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the Tick is worth reading.
Well, I think it's important in a lot of different ways.
And it's funny.
No, it's a great book.
It's super funny.
And it is touching. I think I saw that I looked over and I saw that you had it, and I was like, wow, that's a really good call, actually, because they are. I think if you like Empowered, you will definitely like the Tick.
Cool. All right, Joe, what do you want to recommend?
I brought something that's a little funny because I didn't realize this until afterwards. I brought Danger Girl by J. Scott Campbell and Andy Hartnell. And I think the really funny thing about this is that not only do I think it kind of has this very tongue-in-cheek kind of feel about it, where it is kind of very cheesecakey, but it's very aware of that, and it does a very good job of kind of lampooning that. I think that also Adam Warren, one of his bigger comic projects was Gen 13, which was originally J. Scott Campbell's book for Image. And I'm ashamed to say that back in the day, I loved it.
Well,
but-
it's gone through, like, Gen 13's gone through good and bad.
Yeah, now
times,
like
for sure.
Fairchild is in Superboy, and it makes me sad and everything. But no, it's just a lot of fun. It's basically this like it's a set of three. It's the very typical setup of like three hot girls. Each one is a specialist in something, and like very Charlie's Angels. But
Well, it's definitely a parody of that.
yeah, it definitely parodies, and there's a lot of like it's a lot of poking fun at it in general. And it's a lot of fun to read.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about this and Bomb Queen, which is what I recommended before for Ladies' Night, I think, is that it doesn't take itself seriously, and I think it kind of gets around the tropes that it makes fun of by, telling a good story and getting some of that character development.
Yeah, this was a book that I picked up when I was like way too young to be reading a book like this. Because, this would be a book I would hide from my mom when I was young. Because I was like, I got it totally for the male gaze aspect of it, right?
No,
like
totally.
there's tits everywhere. So I was like, I'm going to read this. But then you start reading it and you're like, this is actually really good.
Yeah, no,
like, I have to hide this from my mom because I'm embarrassed that she'll look at it, but I
It's a
like
lot
the
of fun.
story. I read it for the story, Mom, I promise.
I've never actually read Danger Girl. I just remember it from having JPEGs of certain panels on my computer in like 1995 when I first got on the internet.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's definitely that. I think it's definitely that kind of. I mean, it's the kind of comic book that you would have JPEGs on your computer about. But
Well, J. Scott Campbell draws pretty ladies.
yeah, exactly.
That's what he's good at.
But it does a really good job of telling a fun, almost very, very kind of similar to. It's got even some like Hellboy aspects to it in the story they're telling. But I mean, it's just you'll smile through the whole thing because it never takes itself seriously, and it avoids a lot of the pitfalls that I think a lot of this stuff falls into. So it's not like Grimm's fairy tales or Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose, which we are going to podcast about one day because that is the only way I think I'd be okay with me reading all of that because it's just.
I don't want to read that.
I don't want to read it either.
This does. I don't know. You bastards have to. Like I will do it. I don't care if I have to do it by myself.
You can do it by yourself. Then.
I
mean, we should be reviewing some bad comic books.
and I think the thing that kind of
Without bad comics, there's no good comic
But
because
we're
they're
here
all the same.
We're here to guide people towards good comics. Like they didn't click on a comic podcast because they didn't read comics. Like I think that our fan base probably already
Reads comics.
I'm here to
comic.
read stuff that I've never read before.
And yeah, I do it for
and
the
that Taro,
recommendations.
the Witch of the Black Rose, would fall perfectly into
I don't
that.
need recommendations of
I
bad
think
books.
My big problem.
I could just be reading DC instead.
That's true. And I think when I read Danger Girl, it's funny, but it's also like it's a well-crafted story. I think
It's
and the
funny,
plot beats are
but you
there.
learn something.
Well, I don't think you really learn anything, but like
Maybe how to be a spy.
it doesn't pretend to be something it's not. And one of the most insidious, like I could call out Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose for many things. Awful storytelling, really like horribly fucking mutated art. Like people do not look that way. But the worst and most insidious thing about it is that everything it does, it claims to do under this guise of like feminism. Like, it's okay, I'm a witch, I walk around naked all the time. And it's like, yeah, but you would literally break in half at the waist because people don't look the way that you, it's like, it's clearly not empowering in any way. Unlike Empowered, because these are clearly not, they're clearly not, this is a tits and an ass walking around, and that's all it is. She's a vehicle for sex. And the character is not developed in any way other than that, even though it claims ad nauseum that it is. And then one of the things I like about things like Empowered, aside from the fact that it's great world building, and books like Bomb Queen and Danger Girl that don't take themselves seriously and are just kind of having a laugh, is that they know exactly what they are, and that's what they are. And they don't ever try to be anything they're not. So I think really read Danger Girl and don't read Tarot Witch of the Black Rose.
So we won't read it either. All right, Kirby, what would you like to recommend?
Well, I brought the first. I don't know what this would be called.
Let's call that a
maybe
large trade.
A large trade. I brought the first large trade of Love and Rockets, Maggie the Mechanic. And I kind of looked at it, I guess, in a more serious point of view. You guys are kind of doing the silly part of Empowered. And
Hey, whoa.
it's fine. It's a silly book. But I chose kind of more of like growing up with somebody aspect of it. So I brought this because it's about, two girls, they're like BFFs and they're kind of growing up in like the punk age. And one of the things I really liked about it, which is similar to what the way Empowered was, where it started out as one thing, but then it turned into something else. Like even in this book, if you just look at like the art style and like the way he thought that it was going to be, and then it turns into something totally different, which is amazing, then I don't know. I just really like it. It's a good, like, girly story. Like, he writes women really well, too. Like, you can really relate to them and stuff.
Yeah, it's more of the personal aspect of, like, being close to somebody. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, and it kind of hits on, too, because, like, Maggie, she ends up, like, towards the end of the book, she gets fat, and, like, she's, like, really subconscious, and her friends are like, no, you're still, like, you're still Maggie, you're still beautiful, and I don't know if this one, she runs into, like, her crush again. Like, later she runs into her crush again after that ran race looking motherfucker. And she's, like, nervous about it. And it just kind of really hits on all of those things that you kind of run into growing up and you kind of, like,
I think if you like Strangers in Paradise and Box Office Poison and those more, like, slice of life type books, you'll also really like this book as well.
Well, in this, I think Jaime Hernandez is one of maybe two people I've met that are kind of heroes of mine that I've geeked out and was like not able to speak to them. Love and Rockets, especially the Locas books, which refer to Hopi and Maggie, of which this is the first collection of the stuff he did for Fantagraphics in the 80s. This was like really underground stuff back then, and nobody was doing stuff like this. And I think it is at the pinnacle. Like, I think it's probably one of my top 5 favorite things to read. But I also think it's probably one of the best comics ever written. And I think that the funny thing about our first 3 recommendations is I think if you like the superhero aspect of Empowered, you're going to love The Tick. If you like the more funny, kind of cheesy, silly aspect of Empowered, you're going to like Danger Girl. If you like the relationship between Empowered and Ninjette, you're really going to like Love and Rockets.
Yeah, and this is another book that really got me into comics. Like, I remember I picked this one up because we watched, like, some comic special, and it had Jamie, like,
we watched Comic Book the Movie, I think.
Yeah, or something like that. And he talked about the scene where, I think it's Maggie, like, she sees some boots in the window, and she's like, oh, I really want those boots. And then, like, somebody else comes and, like, gets the boots, and she's all jealous of them and stuff. Like, that was just kind of like, oh, I'll pick it up. And then I just read through all of it. And once again, I finished Joe's collection of it.
She did, actually. She did.
So, yeah, this one is good if you like kind of like the relationships and the growing of, like, the strong female characters.
All right.
And we will be doing a long run of this eventually, because this might be my next pick.
All right.
All right.
Sounds
Foreshadowing.
I had a hard time thinking about what I wanted to recommend based on this. And the first thing I thought about was Invincible, but we've talked about Invincible a lot, and so I wanted to try and point to something else. And so I'm actually going to refer to 2 different things because one of them is actually pretty short. So if you really like the kind of deconstructionist superhero aspect of Empowered, but not so much the silliness like with The Tick, there's a webcomic that I've been reading recently. It's only been running for a little while, so it's not very long at this point. It's called Strong Female Protagonist. It takes a little bit of getting into because the art is kind of rough at the beginning, but it's basically a superhero setting where superpowers are genetic. And so the first generation of heroes were teenagers because that's when their powers first came into effect. And the main character of this comic is this girl. She's 19 at this point, and she has like super strength and invulnerability and all of that. And she's decided that she doesn't want to be a superhero because she's not making a difference in the world. She wants to try and figure out a way to use her powers to really change the world and make it a better place. And so the comics is kind of about her journey and exploring kind of a deconstructed superhero universe.
Cool.
So that's really cool. The other thing I want to recommend, if you really kind of like the sexy drawing aspect of Empowered, is Brandon Graham's Multiple Warheads. We talked about Brandon Graham in the past. He's a really good artist, a really good writer.
Buy him a sandwich.
What's
Buy
that?
him a sandwich.
Yeah, buy him a
Buy
sandwich.
him a sandwich.
Good call, Cade. But Multiple Warheads, it's probably set in the same universe as King City, which we reviewed before. And it's just kind of these two people off having this kind of weird adventure. And it's kind of silly and fun, and there's some sexy bits in it.
Nice.
I think he also does, if you want to check out something a little bit more erotic by Brandon Graham.
Yes,
He's
Brandon Graham
definitely
used to do porn comics.
and he wrote this one called like Sex Explorers or something
yeah,
like
something
that.
like that.
Which, I mean, is porn straight up.
Right.
But it is fucking hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. It retains all of his sense of
Yeah,
humor.
if you like Brandon Graham, he has done explicit pornographic comics. Multiple Warheads is not super explicit. There's a lot of butts in it. But
well, he's all about the butts.
yeah, he likes butts.
Everybody loves
He's
butts.
like Tina Belcher. He's all about the
Butts.
butts.
But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more PG-13 than Sex Explorers,
Then NC-17.
yeah, check out Multiple Warheads.
All right.
It's a lot of fun.
Cool. And Cade, you're gonna pick the book for.
I am gonna pick the book for the next long run, but there is something that I wanted to recommend just because I was thinking about it's something that through these recommendations we haven't touched upon is if you liked the Super Homies and if you liked that weird kind of superheroes that shouldn't be superheroes kind of dynamic. A good one to pick up would be Powers by Brian Michael Bendis. It's definitely not in the same vein as Empowered, but you will see a lot of the same kinds of superheroes as the Super Homies. And
well, there's one specifically that deals with a JLA type super group. Isn't that? It's called the Sellouts, I think, is the collection.
It's like the third.
probably.
I thought it was the sixth one.
I don't
It's
remember
one
what order
like
they go in.
there's.
Yeah, the
Powers
first
isn't good before it goes to
the first 7 trades before it was published by Marvel,
Marvel, yeah.
were very well done and it was weird because it was creator owned, so they could do whatever they wanted, and that's how they ended up creating superheroes like the Super Homies. So I just wanted to touch on that. If you liked the Super Homies and liked the weird kind of superhero aspect of it, then check out Powers because that's got some of them.
I would say the first 6. 7 gets a little weird, but if you really like the first 6, then buy the 7th. But don't go any further than that. Just don't, because it's like I think they rebooted Marvel. It went to Marvel.
Yeah, and Brian Michael Bendis was being overworked.
Yeah,
like
we all know that
he was writing like 8 series at the time when he rebooted Powers at Marvel. Which actually brings me to my next recommendation because it's also by Brian Michael Bendis about this time, but this was actually him getting stuff right because this is the book that he cared about, and that is Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I'm really excited to read this.
The ones that we're gonna read, it was rebooted partway through, but then went back to its original numbering. So it's Ultimate Spider-Man issues 1 through 60, the 3 annuals, and
1 through 160.
1 through 160.
Yeah.
Sorry, the 3 annuals, Ultimate 6 1 through 6, and then Ultimatum Requiem.
Yeah.
So in all, it's 27 trades, and if you
So
a little bit of work there.
Extra long run.
This will be by far the largest long run we've done, so it's okay.
Well, that was kind of the point
Of the long
of the long run
Yeah.
was to read some longer stuff. So it's like,
Yeah.
yes, we want to read all of Ultimate Spider-Man the Peter Parker years,
And talk about
because it's been re-released now as Ultimate Comics Spider-Man with Michael Morales.
Right.
Or Miles Morales.
Miles
excuse me.
Morales.
So
But the idea was that we would take however long we need to read the entire series.
The entire
So,
series.
yeah, it's basically any trade that's called Ultimate Spider-Man. If it says Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, then it's not the run that we're doing.
Cool. So we'll read
But
that for
it's-
next time. Probably
Probably
in a
releasing
couple
in
months.
December to January.
when we're
Yeah.
all done with it.
Yeah.
Depends on when this issue comes out, I guess. Or this episode.
Well,
comes
hopefully
out.
this episode will be released sometime in early October.
Yeah.
And you can check me depending on when you're listening to it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Hopefully
you
hopefully
know
we'll
better
get-
than we do when it's coming out.
hopefully
already
we'll be able to get this recorded sometime in late November or early December.
Future
You
people.
are living
Yeah.
in the future.
And we'll get it out then.
All right, so stay tuned for the long run. We'll try
And
to
get
see
reading.
what we do
Longest
with that.
run.
Get reading for the longest
I mean,
run.
ultimately, like if we finish the episode before you finish reading the comics, you don't have to listen to it right
Yeah.
away. You can hold on to that.
Well, and also I've read, I would say 80% of this already, and it reads really quick.
I've read maybe the first quarter. I picked up. They didn't re-release. They didn't reprint the individual issues, but they reprinted like the first 3 issues as a single thick
Yeah.
comic. Like
Marvel must-haves.
yeah, like
Yeah.
3
Is what it was
like
called.
they did the first 3 issues and then they released them all together in a thick
Right.
thing. And I picked that up along with issue 4 right when it came out
Mhm.
and read it for maybe 30 or 40 issues and then kind of petered out on it.
This was a weird trade. I started reading at the 3rd trade, and I didn't read the first 2. Someone gave me the 3rd trade. Like, they were like, oh, I have this thing and I don't want it. Here you go. And so I had the 3rd trade, and I was like, oh, well, whatever, I'll read it. And I didn't go get the first 2, so I started in the middle, so I have a really weird relationship with Ultimate Spider-Man. But I think this series is great, so I'm excited to talk about
Good
it.
deal.
Yeah.
And as always, if you're downloading us
Yeah.
from iTunes, leave a comment.
Leave a review,
Please
rate us
write
on
an
iTunes.
iTunes
rate
review.
us on
Tell your
Stitcher.
friends, post about us on Facebook, do everything you can to get the word out.
Yeah,
All right.
totally.
And thanks for listening, guys, and check out all the books we recommended, and we'll
Yeah.
see you next time.
On the long run.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We'll see you in between then.
We'll see.
I mean,
but
we won't see you,
Unless
won't
you
see
send us pictures.
which
You won't see us. You'll hear us again soon, but you won't hear the long run us until.
yeah, this is a alternate universe.
This is out of continuity.
This
This
is
is an
Elseworlds view from the
podcast.
gutter.
All right.
View from the gutters.
Okay. Thanks for listening,
We out.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.